This is Flick.
This is Rudy.
And this week it's part two of our discussion of indie in the aughts. It's 2005 to 2009.
It's one of my all-time favorite eras in modern music. It's just I'm chomping at the bit today. And also this week, I think we have to squeeze some new music in because there's been some big releases, some heavy hitters, and some bangers.
A lot of bangers.
Lots of bangers coming up next.
Well know, you may not know it, and if you don't know it, I really don't know where you've been.
You forgot? Forgot the magnetism of Robin Zander or the charisma of Rick Nielsen?
That's kid stuff.
It's just come up to 5:35 a.m. Kommen Sie bitte und listen to Kraftwerk.
I don't know, man. I kind of like Van Halen.
Well, yeah, Plum, you do. And you know why you do? Because corporate America is shoving something down your throat and making you believe it because that's what they want you to believe. I mean...
Okay, buddy. I was just trying to cheer us up, so go ahead. Put on some old sad bastard music, see if I care.
That was Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell, a song in which Joni complains that they paved Paradise to put up a parking lot. A measure which actually would have alleviated traffic congestion on the outskirts of Paradise, something which Joni singularly fails to point out, perhaps because it doesn't quite fit in with her blinkered view of the world. Nevertheless, nice song.
How about the tunes? I want you to want me. The Dream Police. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Your mama's alright. Your daddy's alright.
I get by because the people make a special effort to shop here. Mostly young men who spend all their time looking for deleted Smith singles and original, not re-released underline Frank Zappa albums.
Gang. Yes. I mean, look, you can play an E pentatonic scale at 100 miles an hour till somebody's ears burn off. You can learn that, right? But finding the tangents within the framework, therein lies the artistry, man.
God made your ears. You didn't make them. You gonna argue with God's ears? If it sound good and it feel good, then it's musical. So play it like I say play it. From the top.
That was Sweating Lunatic Iggy Pop, part of our Tuesday night punk pack, which is climaxing at midnight with Madness. This is Norfolk Nights with Alan Partridge, and we're in the middle of Super Talk. Super Talk!
It has actually been a pretty big couple of weeks for new music. I haven't had a chance to really immerse myself, but for me, new Magnetic Fields, new Close Lobsters, there's some new Gorillas, new Jaw Wobble. There's lots and lots of really big stuff, at least from new Throwing Muses. That's another one. New Real Estate, new Dream Syndicate. In my world, these are all big, big things. And I haven't had a chance to sit with a ton of them, although I feel like we're finally really hitting the real part of the year where the big albums are going to start.
Yeah, well, okay, so there have been a few things in the last few weeks I've been listening to. Beach Bunny, I think, is probably the best thing I've heard in the last few weeks. I am happy to say that the new Real Estate album is not as bad as I was fearing, because I did not like the single, or I guess we might not have the right terminology for it anymore. I don't know if single is a proper term anymore. I think I heard something to the effect of preview track. So if what, whatever, the preview track, if that's what it's called, was not one I liked at all with the new Real Estate album. But the album itself is not too bad. I don't know if I think it's all that great yet, but so far, it's not too bad. And Guided by Voices came out with their full-length album a couple of weeks ago. there's a couple of things on that, and also like the fact that they have a song that's called Andre the Hawk, because pretty sure it's probably a reference to Andre Dawson.
But that I'm with. The new Grimes record, it was interesting. I'm not a gigantic fan of hers, but when she's good, she's pretty great. And the Hani El Khatib record, he's been putting out preview tracks, or I don't know what, or one-offs, like one-sided singles, I guess. I don't know. He's been putting those out at a fairly regular clip, and I dig the new one. And I think we've put all this stuff up on the our March in Rotation playlist. We are on Spotify. You can find us at Left of the Dial Pod on Spotify.
Yeah, and then once again, I just want to reiterate the Beach Bunny. So far this year, I think the albums that I've liked the most are the new Beach Bunny album and the new Wolf Parade album. Those are the two that are sticking with me the most so far this year.
Yeah, the new Wolf Parade record is pretty good. I'm kicking myself in the butt because I didn't go see him. I would have had some lame excuse, mostly that I'm old. The J Som single, I don't know if I've talked about it. I want to make my first plea of guilty. I missed her record in 2019. That album she put out, I think it's called Anik Co, is really good. And then the first single she has, it's the first great B-side I've heard in a long time. I used to love B-sides when they were like weird and experimental and showed sides of the group that just would have not fit other things, and she's done that with it's unmistakably her stuff, but it's out there, but it's like virtuoso out there. She's great. She's getting better. That album last year, I don't know why I didn't catch that one early, but the new J Som single is definitely hot.
All right. Okay, so we are we moving on to the topic at hand?
Yes, it's a big one. We need to get about it because this is a big topic.
All right. Well, it's part two. So last week we did part one of indies in the 2000s. We did 2000 to 2004. Tonight it's 2005 to 2009.
We've talked about this a lot, and I don't think you and I are going to agree. I'm not even sure that this is the piece of real estate we want to use, but I really feel like 2005 to 2009, particularly with indie music, is a golden era. There are so many great albums of this time, so many great singles. This is really when YouTube started to really also make it so YouTube started to fill the void of Napster, but it also started to become a legit promotion vehicle too. Like just a lot of things converged. The one thing maybe we could agree on when we were talking, just getting ready, is that I also saw an incredible amount of great concerts during that time. I was living in San Francisco. There were just so many good venues still around then, and there still are. It's a great place for music. But I saw lots and lots of great shows. So maybe that's why I think so fondly of it, is because the number of great shows. And again, that's one thing that you and I kick around. I know, like, I don't have the same love for the 90s you do, but that's also an era where you were seeing lots and lots of great shows. So maybe you become really bonded to eras where you go to lots of shows. 05 to 09 is that for me. I'm really bonded to it in that way.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. I think you become, yeah, of course you do. You're engaging in more ways with the music when you're going to see it live. You're probably engaging with it in a stronger way when you're going to see a lot of live shows. I also so I think this is a strong era, yeah, for indie music. But as we talked off the mic about it, I think a big part of the difference between the 90s and the aughts are that in the 90s, record companies were really seeking out these types of bands to sign them to deals, and that wasn't such a good thing artistically, I don't think, because the record labels weren't giving those bands the type of freedom. Whereas in the 2000s, record labels, big major labels, were no longer really interested in that, in these sorts of bands. Indie labels were more viable and were giving bands more freedom to work with, and it was no longer just a place where you would see up and coming bands. You would see bands that were also in their prime, that were still on indie labels, where that wasn't so much the case before this decade. And I think there's a lot of great indie music in the 90s, and in the 80s as well, that a lot of people don't know about. That in the 2000s there was more of a more exposure to indie bands than there were in other decades, as far as at least where those bands were on indie labels, because they were just up and coming in the previous decades. It was just a place where you'd see basically up and coming bands.
I definitely would agree with you. You didn't say it exactly this way, but um, I don't think the bands in the 90s were any better or worse than today. I think every era has probably the same distribution of great artists. Like what art bubbles to the top, I think, has a lot of external explanations. Like the culture and the times and the sort of the economy go a long way in dictating what music sort of gets surfaced and how. The internet really came into its own as a music distribution channel. Music as we consume it now really started to take shape here, and that it, I think, created a brief moment where anybody had a chance again. There was just this brief window where any band who could make something that would catch enough people's ear, it could become very viral, and very big in an organic way that really hasn't been around in a long time. And I think it just, for my purposes, really created sort of a diversity to this, to what we would call indie, the full range of stuff, just the types of music that we're surfacing. I really feel like it really reached its best potential during this time. I'm going to try to make that case anyway. I don't know whether I succeed or not. I still think this, just straight up, some of the music that came out during this time is so good. I hope to make my case. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely agree, as far as it was a time where indie bands were getting good exposure that they didn't get really before and probably after. So
yeah, and I cannot argue with your point. Like, I do think that the major labels took a lot of bands that could have been great indie bands and turned them into really mediocre, like ready-made MTV vehicles,
you're
Um,
right.
and but that I could agree with your point and say that because of what happened from an economic point of view, then you don't have the great records that you do during this time period when there was more artistic control. I'm not necessarily making that case, but I do think I could if I had to. I think it's there, but we'll see. We shall see. We haven't even talked about doing a '90s show. I definitely would like you to make me love the '90s in the way that you do, if it can be done.
All right, yeah, we'll do that at some point.
Done. I think I went first last time, so I will defer, sir.
Okay, well, again, like I did last week, I grouped everything by years. I have a list of 34, I think, songs on this list. And so, starting off with 2005, we're going 2005 to 2009. Uh, band we've already mentioned on this show, from British Columbia. Uh, Total banger. From the album Apologies to the Queen Mary, Wolf Parade, Shine a Light, 2005 on Sub Pop. That starts off my list. From there, it's Bright Eyes on Saddle Creek Records, 2005. I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning. Road to Joy. I don't know if Beethoven got a songwriting credit on that song, but he probably should have.
Yeah, it's public domain, I think, in Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter because nobody's getting those royalties. Stereophonics, Language, Sex, Violence, Other, '05 on V2 Records, Dakota. And the National from Alligator on Baker's Banquet, Mr. November. Sufjan Stevens from Come On, Feel the Illinois on Asthmatic Kitty with Chicago. And let me see. Oh, so much from 2005. I still have two more. Teenage Fan Club from Man Made on Merge Records. It's All in My Mind. And also on Merge Records, Tenement Halls from Knitting Needles and Bicycle Bells. Plenty is Never Enough. So that's the first seven on my list from 2005.
That's big. 2005 is right there for me too. I've got quite a bit, although I'm not doing it by year. I am going to riff though on what you just talked about because I kicked off last week again with a soliloquy about Canada, and I want to give it again. I'm not sure I did the best job last time. I have I've never thought of Canadian music. I've never thought of Canada as like a place that was happening or a scene for music that I really loved. Like there's always been songs from Canadian bands that I've liked, but there's never been a scene that I thought of as like very distinctly Canadian and also something I was very very much into. And the indie music in the aughts totally changed that. And I think some of the best uh, music from the decade comes from Canada, and these are bands that delivered over and over again. And you mentioned Wolf Parade. Apologies to the Queen Mary is a banger, end to end, all killer, no filler, and the reissue's great too because it has some of the EPs that were sort of the warm up for it. I want to talk a little bit about my Canadian All Stars from the back half of the decade. Got to put Wolf Parade right up there. I pick "I'll Believe in Anything," which is technically originally a Sunset Rubdown song, but I don't even think the Sunset Rubdown version is even on Spotify anymore because it is so outclassed by the Wolf Parade record. I want to recommend the side project of them. There's a ton of side projects. I guess you could make a case that Wolf Parade itself is a side project, but one of the ones that's least mentioned but was great was the Handsome Furs, which was the other vocalist from Wolf Parade. I think his name is like Dan Beckner or something like that. Anyway, he and his wife made 3 albums under the name Handsome Furs. All 3 of those records are fantastic. Metric from Toronto, Help I'm Alive, one of the best singles from that decade. Vocal performance is outstanding, beautiful songwriting, beautiful arranging. Absolutely like indie music producing world class songwriting is not something I necessarily think you could get a lot of external agreement on, but Metric did it with Help I'm Alive. Chad Van Galen, I've mentioned before. Chad Van Galen, I believe, was famous first as an automator or animator. And music, I think, is his second career, or he's an illustrator. His album Soft Airplane is one of my all-time favorite records. I've made friendships around this album and the other albums around it in his catalog. When you meet somebody who likes like when I meet people who like Chad Van Galen, I know that I'm instantly going to like them because and maybe he's a bit of an acquired taste. I don't think a lot of vocal coaches would endorse what he's singing or the way he sings. Perhaps it's a bit affected, but and it is a very heavy Neil Young influence in the music writing, particularly on Willow Tree, which I'm going to put up on our Spotify. But Chad Van Galen, another Canadian marvel, and then Arcade Fire's Neon Bible came out during this era. I think we should do a whole show on Neon Bible, or at least a whole show on the Arcade Fire. The fact that Arcade Fire put out 3 pretty near perfect records in a row is a feat that really, like, the Talking Heads did it. I mean, just from like an indie or sort of an alternative point of view, it's not super common to pull three winners out in a row like they did. It's really hard to follow up their first album too, and I think Neon Bible is all the way up to it. I think it's a great record for 50 reasons. I want to write a book about this album. So anyway, kicking off with a little bit of love again for Canada because they just came super strong between the Arcade Fire and the Wolf Parade and Metric and Chad Van Galen, among many, many, many others we don't have time for necessarily. I think even Jolie Holland was in Canada for a while in the Be Good Tanyas during this period, but I could be wrong. Jolie Holland, another favorite from this era. So anyway, big love for Canada. That is my first block.
All right. Okay, so I have 12 songs from '06. So
Go
I'm gonna
for it.
break this. Well, I'm gonna break this up. I'm gonna split that in two, because I don't want to just spit out 12 songs. That's a bit much. So I'm gonna break up '06, and okay. So my '06 starts off with Bell and Sebastian from the Life Pursuit on Rough Trade Records. Another Sunny Day. Fratelli's Scottish band. Not, like a band that I'm not going to say is one of the greatest bands ever or anything like that, but they were a lot of fun and nice, good glammy sort of feel to a lot of their songs that I like a lot, and a lot of attitude. From Costello Music, a song called "For the Girl," and a line that I really like. A very clever chorus to this song that goes, "She was into the Stones when I was into the Roses," which I always really love that play on words. Um, let's see. I'm Sloan from Never Hear the End of It. Who Taught You to Live Like That? And the Hold Steady. So I wasn't sure which Hold Steady song that I was going to include on my list because Boys and Girls in America was not the first Hold Steady song or Hold Steady album that I had bonded with. So I was going to maybe pick something from either one of the first two, but when you get down to it, Stuck Between Stations is really the song that had a lot of great words, great lines in it that I couldn't resist, and so that is the one I went with. And
I'm
then
so glad. Okay. I just have to throw in an attaboy there because that song it's Bruce Springsteen epic. Like there's just no way around it. Like you had to pick that one. I'm just
yeah, well, and there's it's and there's a lot in there about Minnesota that I couldn't resist going with because of my Minnesota love. Um, and then okay, and then I have Jay Reatard from Blood Visions from In the Red Records with Nightmares, and going to end off this half of '06 with one of the absolute best songs of the decade. I think TV on the Radio from Return to Cookie Mountain, Wolf Like Me. That's that's another banger. Um, Shine a Light from Wolf Parade and Wolf Like Me are just like two of the top songs that came out in this 2 year period, and Stuck Between Stations as well. Those are like three of the very best songs of the decade.
yeah. I think I went with Province from TV on the Radio, but they just captured lightning. I think at that time they were just that album in particular is really good, really really
Yeah.
really good. And you can't, yeah, the Hold Steady. You just can't. I can't argue with that. Um, I don't have the quite the Minnesota love that you have because grain belt tastes like shit. Um,
No, it doesn't.
I just was baiting you a little bit there. All righty. We had a little bit of a discussion. Again, I think the internet of the aughts is a big thing that made music interesting and made me pay attention to indie again. Although we talked about last time, Yeti magazine. There was still like the print world still mattered. There were still a lot of great like music press, and I couldn't wait to go to like Los Angeles or New York to go to their great newsstands because you could still buy such great music journalism back then. And that's really like Pitchfork's glory days too. Just the stuff the fact that that people could start distributing their own music meant that there was some weird stuff that made it to the top of or that found its way into my orbit. And I associate with that decade with really helping me to expand my musical tastes in the weird direction. There was sort of that new weird folk, or the new weird America uh, thing I talked about a little bit last time, but it really did stay weird for a while there. And some stuff I don't know if it's probably a little bit of a cliche and it's hacky to call shoo weird. They're not for everybody, I don't think. Although they have great taste in cover material. I mean, the songs that they cover, not necessarily their album covers. I wouldn't necessarily go through those looking for taste. But Boy Soprano by Shoo Shoo is the weirdest song that I've ever thought is just fucking great and is a banger. It is a banger, and it doesn't sound like one, and the video's weird, and their career is very polarizing. But I'm telling you, there's a real song in there, and Jamie Stewart's a real songwriter, and he's really fucking good. He's really, really good. And I don't expect everybody to take that just because I say it, but try Boy Soprano, give it a real try. The Smell is I was never at the Smell. I would have been too old to hang at the Smell. It was an all ages club that I believe was in its heyday in the aughts. Two of the bands that percolated out of there that I thought were great was No Age, which basically made their bones, I think, on a bunch of 7-inch singles that got compiled. And then that's where Pitchfork got them. That's probably where I crossed paths with them. And then I want to give special mention to a band who has the dumbest ass name ever for a band, but damn, that record, their records are good. The band is Abe Vigoda. Come on, man. Don't name your band Abe Vigoda, especially if you sound like they sound like a little more art damaged Bowie. I put on the song Don't Lie, which is like might be the last great shoegaze record, but it's got like a Bowie vocal on a shoegaze track. Very very interesting combination. So just a couple other weirdo honorable mentions. Akron Family, Everyone is Guilty. I love music, you guys. I love music. There's a couple genres, though, that I really dislike. Jam bands are one of them. And Akron Family has almost made me into a jam band fan. Everyone is Guilty is as close to loving jam band music as I think I'm capable of getting. And then finally here, Castanets, Song is Not the Song of the World. Kind of an off-kilter, off-camber, like anti-folk song. Some of the most memorable zingers lyric-wise for me. Just stuff that it's very dreamlike in a lot of ways, kind of nonsensical in other ways, but in just some of the imagery here. And Castanets ended up making some very good, like freak folk, but like Americana stuff too during the decade. So it was a really great time for self-distributed sort of weirder stuff. And it really helped me find a ton of more abstract bands, stuff I never would have really found on my own. This is the decade where I found the experimental music section at the M.I.A record store, and I pretty much owe it to the quietest, the internet, and Yeti, I guess. It was really, really a great time for weird music. So here ends that.
All right. Okay. I'm going to complete 06. Cat Power from the Greatest, the title track on Matador Records. Tearjerker of a song. Peter, Bjorn, and John, Writer's Block on V2. I'm not going to go with the song that probably everybody would think that I would go with. The song that probably is what 90% of the people, probably the only song that 90% of the people know off of that. But Let's Call It Off is the song that I like the most off of that album, actually. Cold War Kids from Robbers and Cowards, Hang Me Up to Dry, another banger. Uh, Kelly Stoltz from Below the Branches on Sub Pop. Ever Thought of Coming Back? I don't know if that's a song you know, but being how you appreciate very Brian-esque, Brian Wilson-esque songs, that's one that you should check out if you don't know that song.
Definitely.
Loose Fur, Born Again in the USA on Drag City. That's a collaboration between Jim O'Rourke and Jeff Tweedy, The Ruling Class, and a song certainly everybody knows from the aughts, and probably people that listen to the radio very much, or at least did at that time, probably hate this song, I would think, at this point. But I don't listen to the radio that much, and really haven't since I was probably in my early teens. But Gnarls Barkley, Crazy from Downtown Records, song that I don't think I ever had the chance to get sick of, but I know it got played incessantly.
I think that's the best song from the decade. I think it's a masterpiece. The video is striking, the music is striking, the lyrics are striking, and it is, I guess, possible to burn out on it, but only after an incredible amount of listens. I don't know of any record that could hold up to that much play. It's great. It's genuinely great.
Yeah,
I can't argue. Can't argue. Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, it certainly did get probably played more than any song should get played. But yeah, I mean, it's possible it holds up anyway. It's just I know that it's tough when a song gets played as much as I know that probably did.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do another country. Do a little geography. Since you mentioned Peter, Bjorn, and John, Sweden is not a place I normally think of as interesting musically. I do think Dancing Queen is fantastic, and I know there's something going on by Frida. Well, that was pretty good, but musically, I can't think of anything Swedish other than Hooked on a Feeling, and that's another punchline. For some reason, Sweden really delivered particularly in the late aughts. So Peter, Bjorn, and John, Writer's Block, was a great album. And I didn't pick young folks from that album, even I'm not trying to be cute. Like, it's a little overplayed. That's a great song. Yeah, I love that song.
I wasn't trying to be cute either.
But,
no,
I know exactly. Yeah. I mean, but I think people diss that song now and act like it wasn't ever great. It was great, and it is great. I picked Amsterdam from that album. I love that song, Amsterdam, and I listen to it all the time to this day. None of their other stuff has ever been as great as that album either, although the one they put out just recently is pretty good. First Aid Kit, they're from Sweden. They got found on YouTube because they did a cover of Fleet Fox's Tiger Mountain Peasant Song, which is amazing. But it turns out that, while they do some great covers, their originals really are where it's at. But definitely First Aid Kit out of Sweden. El Perro del Mar on Memphis Industries. Now that is, again, I use the term reactionary, and I realize that has mostly negative connotations, but it's like, I don't know, can you do an homage to the 50s at this point? I don't know. I feel like we're kind of past the homage stage. It's very old sounding, but it's so beautifully written. Her voice is so beautiful. I think she's made nothing but great records. They're all they sound like they're from the past, but they're great. They're really wonderful, and they're really well written. That was when she made her debut. God Knows You Gotta Give to Get, I think, is the standout track on her debut. Shout Out Louds, Tonight I Have to Leave It, they're Swedish. Honey Drips, Fall from a Height. The Field, Paw on My Face. The Field has made great records. They even do a great cover of the of Everybody Has to Learn Sometime. Um, they're Swedish. And then Jens Lekman, Postcard to Nina. That was a fantastic album that was on. But then the big one, and I think we talked about this one a little bit, Mr. Flick. I'm interested in your opinion. I think the Teddy Bears album, Soft Machine, is fantastic. Um, it has the Iggy Pop cameo, which ended up in like a Cadillac commercial, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it was ever indie in the purest sense. I think it was on Atlantic Records, but you can't make a case that it was basically loaded up. It's like Swedish dance music with some like maybe dance hall stars and Iggy Pop. I think it had a very indie spirit to it. Again, out of another album from just a fantastic record from Sweden. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what made Sweden so good during this period, but I really thought they way out. They punched above their weight, shall we say, and way outperformed the field. So go Sweden.
Well, okay, so that's kind of like you know what we were talking about with Canada though last week. I think it was just a time where I think these certain regions, certain countries, they go through periods where somebody brings attention to them, you know, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't good stuff going on the rest of the time. I'm glad you mentioned the Shout Out Louds, though. They were on my list last week in the early part of the decade, so I had them represented as well. And you and I both like the Cardigans as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Forgot about them.
So, you know, and yeah, there you're going back to the 90s. So there was at least that going on in Sweden in the 90s.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, but the Cardigans are certainly, to me, would be the most artistically serious music from Sweden. Like ABBA was very popular, and I understand why. Like it's good songcraft, but I don't know. Other than Dancing Queen, and I don't know, does any of that really heavy like art? Is it like artistic heavyweight stuff?
I don't know if it's heavyweight. I'm a fan of Knowing Me, Knowing You, and yeah, I'm
Take a
not the
chance
biggest
on me.
ABBA fan. What's
That's
that?
good. Take a chance on me is pretty good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good song. I'm not the hugest ABBA fan in the world, but those are good songs.
All right, I'm gonna put some ABBA in the rotation. I'm sorry, I think it's time. But were you ever a First Aid Kit fan?
Yeah, I like the way they sound. I don't really know their catalog all that well, but I like the way they sound. They seem to do really good covers.
Yeah.
They did a cover of Waterloo Sunset. I'm trying to think of. Well, they have a song called Emmylou, which
Yeah, that's why I was gonna say, yeah.
yeah, which I like that song a lot because I like the subject matter a lot. You know, I love Emmylou Harris and the fact that they mention Graham Parsons in the song as well.
Yep.
So yeah, of course I love that song.
Awesome. I'm go Team Sweden.
That's right. All right, am I out?
It is you.
Okay. All right, so we're on to 07 on my list. All right, I'm going to start this off with Arctic Monkeys from their sophomore effort. And I wasn't sure if I was going to go with something from Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not from '06. I decided to, which would have been A Certain Romance had I done that. That would have been the song I would have pulled. I decided to go with Fluorescent Adolescent from Favorite Worst Nightmare in '07. Next, M.I.A. with Paper Planes, another song, you know, that got played a ton. So it's a good thing I don't turn to the radio because I didn't get, you know, it like crazy. It was pretty much everywhere you went though during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
But a great song. Great pull from Straight to Hell by The Clash, of
Yep.
course. And another really another one of the I think unquestionably big songs of the decade. MGMT, which during that time I used to always refer to them as management because that's where I thought that was how you're supposed to say it, but I guess you're just supposed to say MGMT from Oracular Spectacular Kids, which is actually on Columbia Records. So that gets back to it can be on a big label but have the indie aesthetic.
Yeah.
And then of Montreal from Hissing Fauna. Uh, Are You the Destroyer? I did say it in its entirety. Groenlandic edit. And wasn't sure which Ockerville River record or song I was going to go with on my list, but it was kind of hard not to go with Our Life Is Not a Movie from Stage Names because that song is definitely I think one of the very best of the decade.
Oh yeah. You
Um,
can't argue with that.
yeah. I'm gonna hold on 2000. I'm gonna complete 2007 on the next one because again I'm kind of running into a lot of songs here,
All right.
and yeah, and I'm not gonna have much in '08 and '09, so I'm just going to hold off.
All right. I'm going to prolong the magic here on MGMT and M.I.A. Both of those were on my list, and I'm going to sort of, I don't really have a great category, although again, to me, indie music started to be a little bit more indie rock, like college rock, in the early '80s. I don't know. It didn't groove, like it didn't have a lot of it was just very straight ahead, and it was still primarily rock music. And the indie music by now, by the late aughts, really was everything. And there was a lot of the old freestyle music from the '80s was sort of brought back as a sort of um, uh, like dance music really started to be pretty good again. So the M.I.A. record I thought was really good. Hot Chip, Over and Over, that's a great record. I want to particularly talk about Yacht, Sea Mystery Lights. Fantastic record. The song The Afterlife, I would say, absolute banger. I've listened to that. I've listened to that record probably every maybe every month since it's come out. I can't get enough of that record. And then you mentioned Paper Planes. I mentioned Paper Planes. I believe that is Diplo, if I'm not mistaken. This is where I should probably not talk about stuff I'm not 100% sure of. I believe Diplo gets writing credit with M.I.A. for Paper Planes. I think he's the guy who did the beat for that. His other project launched during this era, which is Major Lazer. And the Major Lazer song, Hold the Line, is one of the greatest things I have ever heard. Now, I'm a fan of dancehall music, but I'm not an expert on it. I have no idea how authentic this record is as dancehall, or whether or not it is appropriative. I really don't know, but it it borrows heavily from um, the language of dance hall, but it integrates in with it that incredible like Dick Dale guitar. If you've ever wanted to hear what surf music on top of dance hall sounds like, this is a pretty good sample. And the lead vocal is done by Santi Gold, whose record Lights Out from her debut is one of my all-time favorites. But I think the vocal performance of her career is Major Lazer's Hold the Line. You definitely got to dig that up if you haven't heard it. You don't have to love reggae or anything like reggae. But Santi Gold's just a fantastic vocal performance an absolute Dick Dale via Jamaica, just absolute insanity for a beat. Gotta recommend it. The lead single for Major Lazer, and I'll finish with this. I can't remember the name of it. Whoever did the first batch of remixes of Hold the Line, one of the remixers wholesale took Toto's Hold the Line and chopped it up so that it perfectly fit the beat and basically took this incredible like dancehall influence record and turned it into the worst Toto like cock rock late 70s bad FM remix I've ever heard. If you can find the Toto Hold the Line remix of Major Lazer's Hold the Line, you're really into something special.
Okay. You want to know who the songwriters are on Paper Planes?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you got M.I.A. You got Diplo.
Yeah.
And then of course, and by the way, Diplo's real first name is Wesley. Just in case you didn't.
I did not know.
And then of course you have Topper Heaton, Mick Jones, Paul Simonon, and Joe Strummer. So
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Those are the credited songwriters on Paper
So
Plane.
yeah, Diplo pulled out two of the greatest records, of any career in the same couple of years, and he did it he's just an omnivore, which I don't think is the same as an appropriator, although it's not necessarily for me to say, but I feel like what Major Lazer is omnivorous, and when they genre hop, and they synthesize stuff, it's done out of love. I really think it is like reverent, and it's of enough artistic quality to I think be given the benefit of the doubt. So give that a rip if you like the M.I.A.
All right. Okay, so I am cleaning up '07 here. Dinosaur Jr. Not a time where Dinosaur Jr. was maybe on everybody's radar, but good album in '07 on Fat Possum Records. Beyond, We're Not Alone is the song that's on my list. Black Lips from Good, Bad, Not Evil, and Bad Kids. Like basically, Bad Kids is like the theme song if Black Lips were a TV show, which I mean, really, it is. It really is very much like a TV theme song. And then Dirt Bombs from okay, so we're moving on to '08 now. Dirt Bombs from We Have You Surrounded on In the Red Records, Ever Loving Man. If I were to pick indie albums from the decade, the Dirt Bombs album that I would have picked is Ultra Glide in Black from the early part of the decade, but since we're picking songs, I went with Ever Loving Man from We Have You Surrounded. And then Titus Andronicus from The Airing of Grievances, their debut in '08, No Future. And then I'm going to finish off '08 here, or not finish off '08, but finish off this part of the set with Vampire Weekend from their self-titled debut. Wasn't really sure which song I was going to go with. I kind of went back and forth because this is definitely one of my favorite albums of the decade, the Vampire Weekend debut. I went with M79. Kind of went back and forth between 3 or 4 different songs that I could have gone with. Went with M79. Kind of it was just kind of the song of the moment because I haven't really listened to it in a long time, and it brought back a lot of memories when I was putting together my list. Plus, it sounds nothing like anything else on my list, so I felt like that was a good enough reason as well.
Yeah, I don't want to be too cute, but I picked Ladies of Cambridge, which I believe
I think you're being too cute.
Yeah. It's good, though. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. I don't know if I think it's as good as most of what's on that debut.
Mm. All right, I'm gonna do a. How many do you have left?
I have 5 left, so I basically have one grouping here.
One grouping. All right, so I'm going to. I'm just going to do a catch-all bin here, and then my last one, I'll do my favorite live shows, which happen to also be my favorite songs. I have to mention E40's "Tell Me When to Go." Most of the time from '05 to '09, I was living in the Bay Area, in Oakland in particular. You know, I'm not an expert on E40, but if you spend 15 minutes in Oakland, you're pretty much going to hear whatever is new of his. It's going to be on the radio. It's going to be on every car that drives by. At some point, you're going to hear it. And so you pick some of this stuff up. And I frankly think he's very prolific, but every album, he's still good for at least one, like, epic banger. And I would say "Tell Me When to Go" from E40 is up there. And then the other one I could, like, offhand, I'm not an expert on rap. I'm not I don't go super deep into the genre of indie hip hop during this time period, but the Mike Jones "Still Tippin'," it's I saw a whole tweet stream. What's that? A feed, a whole. Damn it, God, am I having a senior moment here? And a whole thread about this song and whether it's is it the best guest appearances ever on any rap song, like, ever? And is Paul Wall's verse the best, like, last verse of all time, particularly as a guest verse? I'm not qualified at all to answer those questions, but holy crap! I mean, "Still Tippin'." Even my nephew who thinks anything even 10 years old is ancient history, even he is still playing "Still Tippin'" by Mike Jones. I know there's probably 500 other indie hip hop records of that time that are worth a mention. I just don't have the depth or class. I do want to go back and say, though, again, the Gnarls Barkley record. I still think best album of the decade, but and I want to go back to the Of Montreal that you were mentioning. That era, he put out at least 3 or 4 great records in a row. And you and I think, both have pretty good depth in his catalog. Like, I liked his more Elephant Six indie type stuff. The early on, it was a little twee for a lack. I think twee is a word that has been applied to him more than a few times. It was a little on the twee side, but he really hit his stride with this, like, fake Prince, like this warmed over Prince style that he was doing, where it was really danceable. It was really fun. The fact that it was about really sad and intense stuff didn't always break the mood, which I think is an incredibly difficult thing to pull off. And he was really, really good at it. So there was just the Of Montreal. That whole period there. I feel like he had a chance to really go mainstream, and he balked at it. I think he got frightened of it. I believe he was involved in Solange Knowles' early records, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin Barnes. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's those long titles. It's those long titles that kept him out of the spotlight, I
I
think.
think so. It's something he did some self-sabotage, because I think he was capable of being like a epic world international pop writer even, but for whatever reason he just it wasn't for him, and I think he went down a very long rabbit hole with more experimental stuff that doesn't hold up all that well. He's starting to get back But we'll see. I think the new record's good. We'll see if it's great.
So I have to backtrack a little bit here because I think we do have a split opinion on so we both agree on Crazy
Yeah.
being one of the strong
Yeah.
songs of the decade.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree on it being one of the best albums though. I don't think it's a great
Oh
album.
no,
I
no,
think
it's not. It's a terrible album. It's a terrible
oh
album.
okay, but you did say album though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant record. Oh no, no,
Okay.
no. I think I don't know if I've ever seen more copies of an album in the used record stores faster than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
because
album sucks.
it is. I don't even know where you go out. It's probably the Violent Femmes cover that you go second on that album, right?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
There's just not much on it.
No,
There's one super strong song and then just a lot of filler,
you
which
don't need anything. If you can write crazy, you don't know anybody's shit. You pretty much that's it. That's it.
no, but
You don't need.
but it is still somewhat disappointing. I would say when you can have the strongest song in the world, but if there's nothing else on that album, I know I will have a good amount of disappointment if that's
Well,
the
I don't.
case.
This might be a bit of fake history, but I believe the next time CeeLo Green had a big hit was with the song "Fuck You," which would have made a fantastic Gnarls Barkley song too. I'm not sure how Crazy came about, and I'm not sure what their songwriting process was about, but it. CeeLo Green certainly, and Danger Mouse are Danger Mouse are both capable of writing incredibly high caliber songs. I think that's what
Hmm.
makes it so surprising that the album is so bad and that the follow up album's not that great.
Yeah, I really I do like Danger Mouse quite a bit. And I should point out, I don't think "Fuck You" was the hit. I think "Forget You" was actually the hit because they
It's a great song. That's a
well
great song.
no, I'm making a joke though just because
Oh, I know. I think
they
it's
weren't going to
hilarious.
be able to play it. You know, in most venues they weren't going to be able to play it as "Fuck You."
Right, but don't you think that's a big moment of liberation that, like, think of the first swear words in records being a big deal, like, oh my gosh, did they really say bitch? Think of how puritanical rock music really was for most of its existence, and that it took till this era, till this time, for someone to write a, like, nearly perfect pop song at the peak of their pop career, just called "Fuck You." That's
Well,
that's a big deal, and I mean in the best
but
possible way.
yeah, but it wasn't unheard of really. It I mean for it to be a song that was quasi I mean like I don't know. I mean you can go back to the Stones certainly. The
What,
Stones that's what?
Cocksuckers Blues?
Well
That
no,
which is a great record.
well I mean nobody really heard that song, but Starfucker was an album track.
Yeah, but I'm talking. CeeLo Green is at the peak of his commercial power after that Gnarls Barkley record. He can use that to do anything he wants to do, and what he uses it for is to write really the follow up to Crazy in terms of just songwriting quality, like his next great record. And he uses that equity to call it "fuck you" and to make the
Well, but
chorus "fuck
he called it
you."
"Forget You." There was a radio version of it.
Yeah, he didn't write it as "forget you."
Well, Two Live Crew didn't write. What was it? Was it called "Me So Horny" when it was played on the radio? It was definitely cleaned up for radio. There was a cleaned up version of "Me So Horny" for radio, and I don't remember exactly how that cleaned up version goes.
Oh, Flick, forget you.
Well, forget you too.
All right, you were saying.
Okay, so I'll wrap up my list here. Um, Still in '08. I still have one song from '08, but '08 and '09 are not as well. We've used the term banger like a million times tonight, so I guess not as many bangers in '08 and '09 for me anyway. And
Fewer bangers, noted.
yeah. So from Lookout Mountain, Lookout Sea, from the Silver Jews in '08, San Francisco, BC. Uh, Drag City, right? That was on Drag City. I didn't
Yes,
write it.
sir.
Yeah. Um, okay, Merge Records, The Clean, Mr. Pop, and an aptly titled album because because this song is a great pop song, but that's not it's not really what you expect from The Clean so much. But in the Dream Life, You Need a Rubber Soul is a great song from The Clean, New Zealand's finest, The Clean.
That's I want to double down on that one. I know it may not be typical of their career, but it's timeless. It's amazing, and it
Yeah,
never tires. I never tire of it. Never.
yeah. It is a great song. Yeah, I don't know that but it isn't exemplary of the band. It's not really like the intro you want to The Clean, because it isn't what the rest of their catalog sounds like, but it is a great song and you know, definitely one you want to seek out if you don't know it.
Yep.
Um Sonic Youth from the Eternal on Matador Records, Antenna. Uh, Ty Siegel, My Sunshine in '09. That was a single. It was on a 2010 album, but it was a single in '09. That's why it makes my list. And the last song on my list from '09, The Cribs, Ignore the Ignorant, Johnny Marr and Company. And I'll pass it back over to you.
All right. Um, well, we're gonna come back to some of these. I'm gonna go out.
Sorry,
Oh
sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
Go.
Sorry, I didn't even give the title of the song. So the crib song that I have on my list is "We Share the Same Skies." I didn't mention the title. Sorry.
We will. We'll have to do a Johnny Marr show at some point for many reasons. All right, I'm going to close out by talking just about some of the best shows I saw during this era, and it's from the albums and artists that I think really were the best of the best. I suppose those things are related. I'll start with Elvis Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins, the actor. He had a record called Ash Wednesday that I literally never stopped listening to. I think it came out in 2007. He put it out on his own. It was self-released. I don't think I've ever stopped listening to it. It's that good. And his Elvis Perkins in Deerland, the second record, was not as good, but it it's still great. And all the stuff he's put out since is none of it's as good, but it's all still pretty damn good. So shout out for Elvis Perkins, and I got to see him at a very tiny little place in San Francisco. It was just a great concert. Another sort of left field artist. I got to see a great show, and his albums are all kind of are more indie than indie. Carl Blau, I believe on K Records for most of this era. The song Crashing Waves from the album Crashing Waves, it's very lo-fi, but I always find something to love from him. I saw him during this era, and I've just nothing but nice things. He seems like a good guy, and Crashing Waves is a really, really good record. M. Ward, I saw him a couple of times. Poison Cup is I just post-war. The album post-war is really special, I think, and he has
Yeah.
a lot of high points in his career. But he everything he does that's great is on there. It's not every great thing in his career is on there, but all the things that make him great, he really was able to string together.
So what you're
Pretty
saying is all the great elements of M. Ward are
Yeah, they
are
are.
yeah, I would agree. He's in peak form on post war.
Yeah.
And Loving Cup could have easily made my list. I went with Vincent O'Brien.
Yeah.
But yeah, Loving Cup is great. It I I guess though already had that on one of my lists on this show. So that I guess that was a good reason for me to go with something else for this one.
Yeah, M. Ward, I know, I think you and I like him for the same reason, but he's how I got to John Fahey, the great guitarist. He's like a folk guitarist, but really a great weirdo. Like, I don't know why I have such a an obsession with going back and labeling things as weird, even when they're just means weird to me. But like John Fahey made a lot of great like traditional American folk music, but he made some really out there stuff that's amazing. The John Fahey at the Mill Pond is a really weird album, but it's one of my favorite things in the world, and I got to it from M. Ward, and M. Ward has never really gone back to that sort of weirder, edgier stuff from super early on in the aughts. But I never begrudged in that because I always thought post-war was so good. Um, my last two, I got to see Quasi on the When the Going Gets Dark tour, and I know that for people who love Quasi, that's not the album they go to first, but it made me love that album. I am a huge Janet Weiss fan, just in general. She's just a great drummer, and her music sensibility is she's I think people underestimate her too as a background vocalist, and her musical ear I think people underestimate. Whether or not When the Going Gets Dark is their best album or not, I really love it. I love the whole first side in particular, or like side A, but Alice the Goon, if you're going to kick off an album, and to kick it off that way and to be able to back it up is pretty amazing. So, and then my last, one of the best music shows I ever got to see was Andrew Bird, and I want to talk about Fake Palindromes. That it sometimes I feel like it's like my favorite record of this millennium. Sometimes I take a break from it, and then I just find myself once again sucked back into it. I don't. He's a little arty for my uh, sensibilities usually. He's good. I think he's from originally from Northwest Illinois, from Elizabeth, Illinois, but I think he recorded this album in Chicago. And I can't remember what. I think this is Merge Records. I think it's Merge, but Fake Palindromes from the Mysterious Production of Eggs. It's just an amazing song. It's an amazing album. It's really like the best of this era. It may not be the best song or the best performance, but it's something special. It's nothing sounds like this record. It's a lot of people pay fealty to Brian Wilson, but they do it by imitating the sound Brian Wilson made. I think Andrew Bird is the first to come along and pay homage to Brian Wilson most directly by not being imitative of the sound, but being imitative of the creative process. And it never works better than on Fake Palindromes. So, and I saw him with Dash, was his drummer. It was really good. It was really good. So, big Andrew Bird fan.
All right. Well, I guess those are our lists.
I put up a playlist. It's 100 songs long just for this last part of the decade. Like, this is my jam, and this is the stuff I didn't even get to talk about half the bands: Camera Obscura and Erase Errata and 50,000 other battles. I could Phosphorescent, Blitzen Trapper, Paper Cuts. I didn't even get to talk about them. Band of Horses. We didn't even talk about Band of Horses. That, you know what? I have to let's go back one more time into the topic real quick. Neither of us picked Grizzly Bear. Do you remember what a big deal Grizzly Bear was?
To me personally,
Yeah. Did you not think they were great?
yeah, I don't know. It wasn't a huge deal to me.
You know what it is? It's because Beyonce and Jay-Z were seen. They went to a Grizzly Bear concert. They just showed up. It was all. I remember it being all over in the newspaper in New York that Jay-Z and Bey were Grizzly Bear fans, and they just showed up. They're just standing there with a bunch of white hipsters. It was great. It was a big deal. I just remember everybody fawning over them about how great they were. I feel like, and then they made an album with Michael McDonald, if I recall correctly. So you know what? Let's end this discussion by mentioning Grizzly Bear and Michael McDonald. I've done the best I can.
All right.
All right. Well, what do we got next week? We have a holiday episode next week.
Yeah, next week with St. Patrick's Day coming up, we'll be making a list of Irish bands.
Can't wait. We've already started debating this one on our off time, which we're music nerds, so that's not surprising. But surprisingly contentious topic. We'll take it up next week.
See you then.